Okay, so last week we talked about the Chen methodology. We talked about each one of these. We talked about the strong entities, weak entities, the different relationship types, the different attribute types, relationship degrees, cardinalities, optionalities. The one thing we skipped on this diagram was the associative entity. And the reason for that is that it's one extra level of complexity that is not necessarily required for basic ERD, but for us to really get a complete enhanced entity relationship diagram, we're going to need to convert these, and these are going to help us bridge the gap between our logical schema to our physical. So what are associative entities? They are kind of a hybrid between a relationship and an entity. And you can think of them as a bigger, badder relationship with attributes. We talked about the fact that attributes can be attached to relationships and not just to entities. So for example, if you have a contract between a vendor and a client, the contract information itself won't necessarily be on the vendor information, because that's just about the vendor. Those are facts like their name and address and such. It's not going to be necessarily on the client table, because again, that's like going to be things about like names and stuff like that. The contracts themselves have their own information that's relevant just to that singular contract. So those generally what you would see is a many-to-many relationship with at least one attribute coming off of the relationship itself. And again, that is not wrong for the Chen diagram, but we're going to take it one level further. The reason why we have to do this is because the database softwares, the management software can't actually handle many-to-many relationships. So they're easy to diagram, but they can't actually do them in the physical. So this conversion process is going to let us do them. So what we're going to do is several steps. So first, you identify the many-to-many relationship in question. And I'm going to actually pull this over here. You're going to identify the many-to-many relationship. So here we have students, courses, multiple students could be in a course. The course gets multiple students. They register. They both have IDs. Okay, we know how to do all this. It's great. The registers itself might have information like registration date. I just didn't add in those kind of information. We're going to put a rectangle around that diamond to show that it is our special type. It is both a relationship and an entity. We're going to flip the crow's feet on the many-to-many relationships inward. Okay, this is really important to remember, and this is one of these little trick kind of questions that you might be asked on a job interview for these DBAs and similar types of jobs. So the crow's feet have to go inward to show that it's a one-to-many from the original entities into the associative entity. Then we're going to finish this up by adding in our identifiers. So we start with our primary keys. So student ID, course ID, those already existed. The registers, our new entity, gets its own primary key, okay? Theoretically, you can smash student ID, course ID together to make a compound ID with registers. It's not wrong, but prefer not to do that and prefer just to give it its own little ID. And then you need to add in the foreign keys from our connecting entities, because we know that foreign keys go from the one to the many. So our course ID gets pulled in as a foreign key, our student ID gets pulled in as a foreign key. And that's it. Now the database management software programs can understand how to do this many-to-many relationship using this connecting table. Magic.